The video you're about to watch features an alternative way of using waypoints to achieve hyperlapse shots. You could do it a lot more simply by using the waypoints mode within the hyperlapse function. No need to leave anything in the comments. I just like to make things hard for myself. Stop it. Watch to the end to see how we splice 3 hyperlapses together in DaVinci Resolve, and also a very cool optical illusion. 3 beautifully charged batteries, got my controller ready, and the Mini 4 Pro. What time is sunset today?
Today, sunset will be at 21:14.
Excellent. Let's do a frantic but relaxed sunset hyperlapse. We're going as high as we can so we don't annoy the neighbours, wake up dogs, babies, etc. Mainly the dog stuff though. We're going to do a static hyperlapse. Position the drone where I want it. You can see the sun is over there somewhere. Now we position our gimbal. Let's use those rule of thirds again. And the little trick here, we're going to be using all 3 batteries. So I'm going to click on the waypoints and add a waypoint here by pressing the C1 button, or you can press the plus button as I'm doing here. And I'm simply going to add another waypoint. Haven't done any changes or anything. We don't need to change anything about the speed. We're going to say we just want to hover at the end of the waypoint mission. We're going to hit go now, and that's it. The waypoint mission has ended. Now we're going to save that because we're going to use another battery in a bit. Let's now go into Hyperlapse, and we can set this up 2-second intervals. The max speed doesn't matter because we're just going to have a static hyperlapse on this one. I'm going to push the duration of the hyperlapse all the way up, and if you watch that duration counter there, so I'm going up to 19 seconds, so it'll take 15 minutes. Now we don't want to stress ourselves out. Let's give ourselves a good sort of 8 minutes or so to not worry. We don't want to be stressed by this. We want this to be just a relaxing experience. Got 17 seconds of hyperlapse. 29 minutes left, so let's just go up a little bit. We can probably push that to about 18, so 22 seconds. Go. And there we go. The drone's directly above the garden. Don't need to worry about that going out of line of sight or anything. I've got 18 minutes to just hang around. I'll fast forward this bit because otherwise it would be really long and boring, and I'm more about short and boring. Here's a few tips. Get your 3 batteries all fully charged before you start. Preparation is key here. Get a battery ready for when we're at the end of this hyperlapse, because we want to bring the drone down, do a real sort of F1 pit stop, swap out of the batteries, and get the drone back up again. Make sure your SD card is nice and clear because we're taking photos at the same time as actually creating a hyperlapse film. You may get a perfect sunset photo. You don't want to miss it, so let's make sure you've got that as beautiful as possible. I'm using an ND8 filter on here because we want to just filter out a little bit of the harsh sunlight should that poke through the clouds, which it doesn't seem to be doing at the moment. Part of the reason we're using all 3 batteries is so that we can go up just before the sunset, during the sunset, and just after when Siri said the sun would set. The sun does tend to set and be more aesthetic just after that time that all the computers tell us it's actually going down. We will be popping into the editing suite, aka my dining room. It'll just be a little bit tacked on the end, so make sure you stick around for that. While you're about it, if you could hit like on this video at this point, that'd be really great. That gets it out to more people that might actually find this interesting. And if you can subscribe, that would score you a whole load of awesome points, but also help me out a little bit as well. So what a hyperlapse is essentially doing is taking lots of photos at intervals and then stringing them all together. Now the DJI Mini 4 Pro and other DJI drones as well, when they're doing hyperlapses, use some really clever stabilization. So even though it's a little bit breezy up there and the drone will be moving about, there's an algorithm actually in the drone itself that will steady that out. Now you may have done hyperlapses where the drone is moving. That function is available on the Mini 3 Pro, the Air 3, obviously the Mavic series, and I think it's probably available on the Mini 4K as well. The problem with that is sometimes, though, it's difficult to judge how good that's actually going to look in post unless you're just going in a very straight line or a very smooth curve. This video is all about just bunging it up in the air and letting it do its stuff, so we don't actually have to worry about it. We don't need to worry about it wandering off over there and us going, uh-oh, where's it gone? It's right up there. So while you're waiting, you can kind of do what you want. Keep hold of the remote controller, obviously, but if you needed to pop in to just get a little glass of squash, shut up. 7 minutes 28 left, and we've got 331 out of 550 photos taken. When it gets down to about 20 seconds before it ends, the little woman in there says it's about to end, so you get a bit of a warning, but you should always be concentrating on this anyway, or at least keeping half an eye on it whilst it's doing its stuff. So the fact that we've saved that waypoint mission means that when we bring the drone down, do the quick swap of the battery, and then send it back up again, we can load in that waypoints mission, and it should be fairly much bob on where it was in the sky prior to the first flight. And then we'll just repeat that for the last flight. The advantage of doing this is that if you're not quite around the right time for the sunset, you're getting the whole lot. So you can make a long clip of daylight through to nighttime, or you can just get the right edit for the sunset itself. The key thing is to not be landing at the crucial sunset time, obviously. So you do need to plan around that a little bit. What I've done is time it so that my first flight is just before sunset, my second flight is during sunset, my third flight is after sunset. So fingers crossed, I won't miss any crucial moments. So we can see here we've got 1 minute 52 left of hyperlapse to take, and we've got just over 5.5 minutes worth of time left on the battery. Now she will start probably just complaining just before the hyperlapse is finished. If you're of a nervous disposition, look away if that starts happening. If you're flying and of a nervous disposition, then probably the best thing to do is just stop the hyperlapse at that point. It'll still save itself, bring the drone back down and do your battery change. It's always best not to stress your batteries too much because it shortens their lifetime. I'm going to stop that hyperlapse there and bring the drone back down. I was being a little bit cocky with sports mode and of course tempted fate and ended up dropping the drone on the floor. Right, one battery out, next battery in. Switch on. We'll load in that waypoint. So that's the waypoint that we saved today. We'll hit next. We'll hit go, and then it'll move to that position, finish doing the 1 second waypoint mission, and then we can set up the hyperlapse again and continue from where we left off. So it's adjusted the gimbal, we switch off the waypoints, go into hyperlapse. We've got 33 minutes, so let's just push this all the way up again, 20 seconds, and there we go. We started again. Hopefully we'll get some sun. If not, we've got some really nice pictures of clouds. Probably for the last hyperlapse that I do, it'll be fairly dark. For speed, I'm not going to be using my strobe. In the UK currently, there is no law to say that you have to have a strobe on your drone, but at the same time, for safety's sake, it's probably a good idea. Now, I had a few comments in my last video saying, well, doesn't that strobe take it over 250 grams? Yes, it does, but I've got the A2 CFC, the Certificate of Competence qualification, which allows me to fly a drone between 250 grams and 500 grams in the A1 open subcategory, just as if it was a drone below 250 grams. Now, you might be lucky and be able to get a strobe that is extremely lightweight. If your Mini 4 Pro was made on a Friday and they left a few screws out of it, it may not actually take it above 250 grams. So that's a good thing. Not such a good thing that some screws have been left out of it, obviously. Now, whilst it might say you've got 30 minutes left of flight time, and you think there's a good margin there, what you've got to remember is that the conditions at 120 meters are changing all the time. So the drone is trying to keep itself as level as possible and as still as possible and is constantly adjusting. So it's using a lot of that battery up. It originally said 33 minutes, but it's not been 10 minutes yet, and we're already past that. So always take that into account. Always have a good margin of error. Your neck does start to ache after a while. I went into work the other day and said my neck ached, and someone said that you must have been sleeping with damp women. Don't know what that means. So you can actually see from this display that even though it's virtually windless down here, it's very still. The Mini 4 Pro is actually fighting a crosswind there. That blue semicircle is showing its angle relative to the ground, so you can see that it is angling slightly to take into account the wind and keep the gimbal as straight as possible. So we've got a good margin there. I think 15 minutes left on the battery and 8 minutes left of Hyperlapse. Let's prepare the next battery. Stress-free. That's what I mean. It's nice and relaxing. If we're very lucky, those clouds look like they're about to move away from the horizon. We may just get a peek at the sun on our third battery. Eurus said 9:14 was when sunset was. It's now 10 minutes to 10 o'clock. Load in the waypoint, off she goes. So, final battery, then we'll bring her down and start just editing that video. Now, when it gets to the end of this bit, don't switch off, because I'm going to show you just very quickly how to put this together and make a nice clip out of all 3 hyperlapses.
Come on, not again.
After you've done something stupid like that, always check your propellers over. Could be damage, and that will ruin your next flight if you don't change them out. Right, let's head back inside to visit the edit monkey. That was weird. Well, thanks for joining me here in the editing suite. So into DaVinci Resolve we go. Let's drag our clips down. Now you can see these clips are in order. So you've got a 4, a 5 and a 6, so it's easy to see which ones are first and which ones are last. So let's drag these down onto the timeline. This is going to sound a bit weird, but we're going to need to sacrifice the ends of these joining parts of the clips. They're going to be used in our transitions when we get to that point. They do come back again, so think of it not so much as a sacrifice, but more as lending the ends of those clips to the editing gods. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of each of those and trim them back. Doesn't have to be very much. And now we're ready for the next stage. Now, if I put these together and we just go over to where these clips are joining, you'll see that even though we put the drone in the same place and the same part of the sky with the same angle, there is very slight difference. And this is to be expected. There are lots of variables, mainly wind, that can affect this. So we're going to match these up. From my last video, when we were matching up day to night transitions, I had some brilliant tips in the comments about using opacity. Normally, you would have a look at this and have a look at the end of that clip and the end of that clip and think, right, oh, they're a bit different. Right, we need to go into the inspector and we need to start shifting things around and spending ages doing that. But this tip is just overlap the ends of each clip and place your playhead right in between them there like that. And then for the top track, change the opacity to 50% or around that. So now what you can see is that there is a difference between the two. If we just make sure you've got your top track selected and you move the position of it around, you can see where you need to match things up. I can see that we've got these solar panels over here that we need to match up. There's quite a difference between these. So let's get that there. So we'll change the horizontal position and the vertical position. Now that's fairly close. Are these lights matched up? So that looks like a slight rotational issue. So we're going to rotate this up so that these lights match. Bring that down a little bit. That's close enough. So now we can bring that track down and put it next to the first track. Then we go along and do the same with the second track and the third track. I'm going to speed this up. You don't need this to be any more boring than it is. Don't forget to reset your opacity to make that 100% again on the clips that you've been adjusting. The next thing we need to do is add a transition. Now, I've done a lot of fiddling about with transitions. Nerd! And I found the best transition to use here is not your smooth cuts, it's not your cross dissolve additives, it's just your bog standard cross dissolve. Let's go into effects, video transitions. We'll drop a transition on here, but then we'll change this by selecting the transition and changing this just to basic cross dissolve. Now, the reason that we've trimmed those ends is because DaVinci uses those ends to make that dissolve. It's really here where you start seeing the accuracy of what you've been doing on your changes. So you might want to still go back and make a few minor adjustments. There we go, that's close enough for the moment. Just extend how long that transition runs for. That does depend on how much you've sacrificed at the end of your clips. So we're going to add our transition here. Just grab any transition, drop it on there, make sure it's selected, and make sure it's cross dissolve. Stretch it out. Okay, so you'd think that's it, but actually, if we look at this in full screen, what's this going on here? We've got a little bit of work to do here because obviously we've been zooming in, so we just need to tidy that up. If we're happy with that clip, select all of your clips, Control and A, or just highlight across all of them, and then create a compound clip. Doesn't matter what we call it, I'll just call it that. And so you can see as we play through that, it's when we get to the second clip, because we've been fiddling around, we've got this dark area here. So I'm going to go into the inspector and we're just going to zoom in until that dark area is gone. We can make some adjustments on our position so that we don't lose too much of that rule of thirds division. And let's just run through this quickly, make sure there aren't any gaps there. So there we go. We've got all three hyperlapses spliced together into one with nice transitions. Now, I realize that this isn't the most inspiring of hyperlapses. The sun didn't do what I was hoping it would do. So let's have a look at one that I'll build from footage from the day before. So now let's go into full screen, have a look at this. You will notice there will be a little bit of wobble. You can use the stabilization function in your editing package if it has it. That wobble there, I see that as part of the character of the hyperlapse. Always advertise your IQ. Bye.